Hey everybody, my name is Gavin and I love horror. The latest production from Blumhouse, The Black Phone, was released this week and is getting pretty good reviews online and horror fans seem to enjoy it. But what you may not know is it's actually an adaptation of a book by Joe Hill. After seeing the Black Phone movie, you may be wondering, well, what are the differences between the book and the movie? Well, listen. I'm about to tell you some of the biggest differences. And yes, I also didn't know I was allowed to talk about books on this channel. But let's talk about the differences between the Black Phone movie and Black Phone book. Let's get into it. Before we get started, I would absolutely love if you subscribe to this channel for all kinds of content like this. I do reaction videos, I do reviews, I do live streams sometimes. So if you could subscribe, that'd be wonderful. Leave a like, leave a comment as well. Everything helps the channel. Would greatly appreciate it. So I keep saying the Black Phone book when actually it's more of it's a short story. Even though the latest printing of it has been all about Ethan Hawke on the cover. The Black Phone actually was first published in 2007 in the US as part of 20th Century Ghosts, a short story compilation by Joe Hill, who's done things like Nosferatu. He's also done Horns, and one of my favorites, Heart-Shaped Box. Joe Hill also famously the son of Stephen King, so if you like horror, Joe Hill is where to go. The short story is only 30 pages long and is actually okay. It's not the best short story I've ever read, but it definitely has enough bones there to make a movie out of it. Now, for this comparison and as far as differences go, I don't just want to say they expanded upon the characters and made things a little bit more in-depth. Because, I mean, clearly if you're adapting a 30-page short story into a full-length movie, you're gonna have to do that. But I just want to lay the groundwork that this is more of an adaptation of Clive Barker's The Hellbound Heart into Hellraiser, as opposed to a full-fledged adaptation like Stephen King's It or Stephen King's The Shining, or basically any Stephen King book they've ever turned into a movie, which is, I think, is all of them. All of them? All of them? That sounds right. There are some big differences though, even between the 30-page short story and this movie. One of the biggest differences is the character of Gwen. In the short story, she is named Susanna, the sister of the main character, Finney. She's 3 years older than Finney in the book, and in this she's actually the younger sister, and her powers are more expanded upon. They're kind of like hinted at in a weird, out of nowhere way in the short story, but in the movie, it becomes a focal point to how Gwen actually helps find Finney in the movie with her having the dreams. She inherited it from her mother. The mom and dad stuff is barely touched upon in the short story. It just basically says a line where the mom leaves because she's tired of the dad. There's no real child abuse angle or alcoholism really touched upon in the short story, but in the movie, it plays a very big part. Actually, for me, someone who enjoyed the movie, I think the most uncomfortable part for me was the instances of child abuse. I think that was the hardest thing to watch for me because you know that happens on a regular basis in a lot of homes across the entire world. So that for me was actually very hard to watch. Child abduction stuff also happens, but just seeing a very raw, brutal depiction of child abuse like you see in the Black Phone was very hard to watch, and something that was left out of the short story. But I will say the psychic stuff was done much better in the movie than the short story. Like I said, in the short story, Finney just kind of imagines his sister, who's in like tarot cards and like that, like finding the house. So it's more like his fantasy. They do briefly mention towards the end, like, she found the balloons, Finney, she found the balloon. But like it's all, the short story, it's a good basis, but it's very kind of like throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. Another instance, and it's more of just a line change more than an actual character difference, is the character of Bruce Yamada, the baseball player who gets abducted by the grabber. In the book, his line that he says to Finney to help him remember is, "You were dirty," referring to how Finney pitches to him. In the opening scene of the movie, you see the pitching duel, and in the movie, he says, "Your arm is mint, you almost had me." So just a line description. I don't know why they changed it. Like, "You were dirty" seems kind of like a fine line to say, but I guess maybe they just thought it could be misconstrued. I don't know, but they changed that line from "you were dirty" to "your arm, it's mint, you almost had me." Also, speaking of Bruce Yamada, in the short story, Bruce is the only one who talks to Finney. There's no other victims that he talks to on the Black Phone. Bruce Yamada is the only one who calls. There's no trial and error there's no Paperboy, there's no Robin, there's no 5 different ghosts coaching Finney to help get past the grabber. It's just Bruce Yamada, and really the only weapon he teaches them how to use is the phone. There's no elaborate trap setup. That's another thing. Throughout the entire movie, Finney is trying to escape with trying to get the grate down, digging holes, things like that. He's basically home alone in this, setting traps for the grabber. In the short story, he only uses the phone. Like, that's his main weapon, is the phone. There's no trips and oopsies. There's no trying to get into a freezer. There's nothing like that. It's only the phone, only talks to Bruce Yamada. And the movie really did do a better job of going more in depth and having him talk to multiple victims, because the multiple victims are mentioned in the short story. But again, at 30 pages, you can't cram a lot in. You just gotta kind of get in, get out. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. But with the movie that's almost over 100 minutes long, you gotta flesh that out a little bit. So having him talk to different victims, I thought gave a lot of character to who was before him and really helped build upon Finney as a character as well. Also, the entire detective plot from the movie is absent from the short story. Like, they talk about the police looking for the grabber, but there's no investigation, there's no talking to Gwen or Susanna as she's known in the book. There's none of that. So the entire detective plotline was completely manufactured for the movie to kind of keep things moving along, seeing how closely we're getting for the grabber. And then finally, there are some big differences between the grabber in the short story and the movie. Most notably, like, I think this is the biggest difference, is the grabber in the short story is described as a part-time clown who is grotesquely fat, which, if you've seen Ethan Hawke, that ain't him. In the movie, he is a part-time magician, so that's close, but he's not grotesquely fat. I mean, sometimes you see him with his shirt unbuttoned, he might have a little bit of a dad bod, but grotesquely fat, you would not describe Ethan Hawke as. Ethan Hawke, I'm loving your career resurgence, my man. You are having a great year, and you give a great performance in The Black Phone. Also, the stuff with wearing masks, that's not in the short story at all. He's just a fat guy named Albert. So the entire stuff with the mask, despite being all over the marketing campaign and even putting it on the cover of the reissue of the book, that's never really expanded upon in the movie either, which was kind of disappointing. Like, why are you wearing the masks, Ethan Hawke? You Ethan Hawke, you got a good face. Show off that face. Show us your face. It was weird that they went so hard on the mask aspect without actually doing anything with it in the movie other than being spooky scary. However, I'm pretty sure there is a Bagul callback with one of the masks, where I think one of the masks is supposed to resemble Bagul for the movie Sinister. If you wonder how I feel about the movie Sinister, you can check out my video on that above. Also, Scott Derrickson, who directed The Black Phone, also directed Sinister. But there's no mention of the mask stuff. The grabber, both in the short story and the movie, never gets really fleshed out. That's one disappointing aspect of the movie and the short story, is they never really expand upon the grabber or his intentions or his motivations, other than, like, he grabs kids, which is a terrifying motive. But it would have been nice to go in with this extra length of a runtime of a movie, maybe go in to see, like, what his plan was, why he does it, explain the masks at least. If you're gonna put it all over your marketing campaign, let us know what they mean. That'd be neat. Also, the brother plotline is a little more fleshed out in the movie, but still, having the brother discover Finney in the basement still kind of doesn't. It kind of works. I feel like the brother was added just to have, like, a shocking kill in the movie. So, I don't know. But overall, there are some big differences, but I think the film version does a much better job telling the story than the original short story. You get to know the characters, and honestly, the movie version just has some great acting, has some fun jump scares, and it was a really good time at the movies for me. I really enjoyed The Black Phone. If you're wondering, will reading the short story ruin the movie? No. They're different enough that you can enjoy both on their own. I read the short story before seeing the movie, and I felt like I kind of knew what the beats were going to be, but honestly, if you watched the trailer to the movie, you knew what the beats were going to be as well. So reading the short story before seeing the movie isn't going to actually ruin anything, so you're fine doing that if you want to. If you read it afterwards, I mean, it's also okay, but it's just an okay short story, if we're being honest. But a really good movie. What do you think? Were you able to check out The Black Phone this weekend? What was your opinion of the movie? Did you read the short story? Do you enjoy it? Do you think I'm being too harsh on it? Or do you wish that they would have maybe carried over more things from the short story, even though I don't really know what? It's 30 pages. I don't know what else they left out. I don't know what else they could have put in. But what do you think? Are you a fan of Joe Hill's work? Are you a fan of what horror are you reading? Yeah, I'll ask for some book recommendations. I can read, allegedly. But let me know in the comments below what you thought of Black Phone, what horror books you would recommend to me. And as always, leave a like for this video, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, you should answer that.